G'day everyone, Kate from the Narrate team here. In week 2 of Narrate series Help I Feel, Adam addresses the tension between our feelings, core values and behaviour. He looks closely at how Jesus models an approach for us, drawing from the book of John.
So if you are a guest with us, or even if you just weren't here last week, we started this brand new series last week called Help I Feel. And the way we think about these are as conversations. We say that often, but you know, our hope is not to be the last word on any conversation. I can't really think of a topic where we feel the need to be the last word in the conversation. Our hope is at times to start conversations or to contribute to conversations that are already ongoing. And for us, it's a win when you go back home and back to conversations with your kids and your coworkers and back to the office and just back to wherever life has you, and you're wrestling with ideas, further researching ideas, disagreeing with ideas. That's okay, because we're not a cult, so you can disagree with us. That's okay as well. That wasn't funny. Like, really? I thought that little jab, I thought you'd like that. So it's not that we don't have conviction. That's not the case at all. It's that, I guess, in the core of what I believe personally, and I guess to whatever extent that's affected this place, I don't know that it necessarily matters if I tell you. I think you own it more when you ask the questions and come to your own conclusions and form those ideas. And so on this topic of Help I Feel, what we're exploring is this idea of emotional intelligence and what that has to do with following in Jesus, and how maybe if you're someone that's never even thought about following Jesus, maybe be surprised to hear that this rabbi who lived 2,000 years ago, who claimed to be lots of things, also had his finger on the pulse of this thing called emotional intelligence. And so part of what we also like about this series is you can say it in lots of different ways. Like you can say, like, help, I feel. Like I said last week, I was 35 when I realized I was a feeling person, and I actually got to hang out with a guy, and he's like, hey, Adam, when you said that, I'm like, me too, I'm 35 years old, and I'm just learning that I also feel. So maybe there's just like, oh yeah, geez, I feel. I didn't know that I feel. There could also be this sense of like, help, I feel, like, ugh, I wish I didn't. Maybe the depression that comes with that, the dejection, just the sense of life would be easier if you didn't. There can also be this like indignation, can't there? Like, help, I feel. And it's like, life is so much easier if I didn't, and I'm kind of torqued about it, or I'm really angry right now because she just pulled out in front of me, and I'm feeling, and all of the buttons are going off on the dashboard, and hopefully part of what we're doing in this series is creating conversation about when the lights light up on the dashboard, then just pause, if nothing else. So last week, I think we could best summarize last week by way of 2 questions. First, we just asked this question of what grade would you give yourself on your emotional intelligence? Like, what if you were to grade yourself? We're not going to ask you to tell your spouse. We're not going to let your spouse grade you, or your in-laws, or you them, or any of that stuff. Like, this is just you, yourself, and you. But if you were to grade your ability to tell that you're feeling, what it is you're feeling, and therefore how your values say you ought to respond in this moment, how effective are you at that? And of course, part of what we explored last week is there is a growing body of research that would say that if we're going to predict someone's success in life, certainly intelligence has something to do with it. So does this thing called grit or chutzpah or just tenacity. But emotional intelligence is every bit as much of those two, and it contributes as much, if not more, according to many, to your ultimate success as do those other 2 things. And so here we go. We're just talking about this emotional intelligence thing. The other thing the other question that I think summarizes where we landed last week, and that's important because we're going to pick up from there, was just how adept is your feeling vocabulary? How proficient are you at articulating not just that you're feeling, but what exactly you are feeling? One guy says that his research would suggest that there are 6,000 English words available to describe how you're feeling. Now, that there aren't 6,000 feelings. 6,000 is a linguistics thing. It's not a like actual feeling thing. Part of what I wanted to do in this series, and I spent a reasonable amount of time researching it, is I thought it'd be really great to know like how many feelings are there. Like, in fact, creatively, one of the things that I suggested to the creative team would be like a periodic table. Remember those exhilarating things when you were in chemistry? The periodic table of elements. Wouldn't that be great if you could just walk up to this poster on your wall and go, I got a little bit of that one, and this one, and what is that? Like, but what I learned as I researched this is there's this very diverse level of opinion among experts. Some go so few as 5 feelings. They would say there's really only 5, and everything else is a unique expression of one of those 5. Another guy that I read was arguing for 177. He was passionate that it wasn't 178. Anyway, I just went like, okay, we're gonna give up on that one. I guess my question, the question we ended up with is how many are in your vocabulary? And we even made fun of us men because we went like, we have 3 and they're all curse words. So let's expand our vocabulary beyond that. Now, you know when you research something or you become really passionate about something or you like paint your house a certain color, you know how familiarity breeds contempt? Have you experienced that in your life? Like suddenly you are your own worst critic? Are you with me? Like you just gave your life, this is terrible, or, grandma bakes a cake, it's terrible, those types of things. That's what happened to me on Tuesday. I've spent so much energy on this topic, both personally and in preparation for this, that on Tuesday morning, I was actually waiting for a friend to come pick up the boys, and I had this thought, and it was somewhat perplexing and a lot horrifying. It was like, who cares? Suddenly, I completely lost sight of, like, why does it matter? Like, is this just another game in semantics because I have a job and I have to talk, and so I'm going to talk about this? Like, Lord, who cares if I can articulate angst and frustration and jealousy? Why can't I just say I'm ticked? Like, what does it matter? And then as I was processing that, I had this memory of this time when I think I was 15, I might have been 16, I don't know. I was a sophomore in high school. My parents had recently gone through a divorce. My mom had moved to Kalispell. I grew up in Laurel. Go Locomotives. My sister had graduated high school. That was the one sibling I had. My dad was like dating, and so that was weird. And we moved out of the house that I grew up in, and we were living in this little house that my great-grandparents used to live in. And listen, I'm totally grateful for the background that my parents gave me. I'm not in any way trying to drive over them with a bus. But I'd gotten home from school, I was walking up the driveway, and I was headed towards the back door, because I don't know if any other of you Germanic families are like this, but I realized that this week too. The Hushkas never use the front door. There's the front room, and you don't ever touch the front room. Did you have this with your grandparents? Like, don't go in the front room. Why? Like, it's nice and comfortable. Don't go in there. So you always, did you do this? You always enter through the back door? And the kids always went downstairs to go to the bathroom? Did you have that dynamic? Okay, so I was headed towards the back door, and there was a detached garage, like a little single-car garage, and as I was about to the back door, my dad and his then-girlfriend came wheeling out the side door of the garage, and immediately I could tell something was wrong. He had sunglasses on. He doesn't typically wear sunglasses, and I could tell his face was distorted, like swollen up. Now, of course, the rest of it is a little bit misty. I don't really remember the conversation. What I remember is him coming up close to me, him taking the sunglasses off. His face was completely swollen up. His eyes weren't swollen shut, but they were certainly black and blue. And I realized as I was listening to him that something bad had happened. Now, when you're looking at your dad, who's Superman at this point still, right? And then he's physically all beat up, and I don't remember what question I asked or how it came out, but what I learned was that there had been an altercation with his girlfriend's ex-husband. And my dad is, like, he's been a railroader since he was 21. He's a consummate man's man. He would never back down from a fight, even if he knew it was one he was going to lose. And he lost this fight. And here I was, this 16-year-old boy, staring at my dad, who, for all intents and purposes, had been beat up. And I just lost it. Now, I've never punched anybody in my life. In fact, I have this memory of being in 6th grade, and there was this guy, Jeremy, who wanted to fight me, and I can't for the life of me remember why he wanted to fight me, though I do remember he was a Seahawks fan. And that's when the Seahawks were in the AFC West, and us Bronco fans just trounced him, and we made fun of him all the time, so maybe that was part of the reason. Anyway, this kid, Jeremy, he was a wrestler. You don't ever fight a wrestler. Like, that's dumb. You don't fight a wrestler. We got to the park, and I realized he actually wanted to hit each other in the face. I was like, oh, this is stupid. And I went home. So I've never punched anybody in the face in my life. I was staring at my dad, and I turned, the house was just right there, and I just lost it, and I proceeded to just punch the house over and over. Now, fortunately, the house wasn't made of masonite. It didn't have wood siding. It had cheap vinyl siding, and it was winter, and so it broke, as did my hand, which further validated I should not punch anything. I was thinking about all that sitting on the steps outside my office this week, in lieu of this question, like, why does this matter? And I guess for just a split second, 36-year-old Adam had a little bit of empathy for 16-year-old Adam, and I just had this thought of, wow, how much different would the story have been had I had the ability to articulate feeling? Like you already are doing, like as I think back, and again, I'm not asking for your sympathy, but as I think back of all the things that were going on in my life and all the plethora of emotion that must have been boiling through my body, I think how much different, not just that moment, but lots of moments, as lots of wheels were falling off for me, how much different had someone been coaching me on this whole process of what are you feeling and why are you feeling it and what are you going to do with it? Because what is the alternative? Have you ever considered that? Like what's the alternative of being an emotionally intelligent person? What's the alternative of having the ability to articulate what you're feeling? Isn't it to board a train? Go locomotives. Isn't it to board a train called emotion? And the moment that thing leaves the station, you have relinquished control of the destination. Like, isn't that what emotion does? That when we start feeling things and we don't understand what we're feeling or why we're feeling it, don't we depart on a journey? And when we're ultimately done with that journey and we get off at a station, isn't that when we don't even know where we're headed? We don't know how far it's going to take us. We don't know how long we're going to be gone. We don't know if we're getting off in jail or divorce. We don't know if we're getting off and having completely obliterated a relationship. We have no idea whether we're not going to get off until 30 years later and we get off at the station of chemical addiction. We have no clue, do we? What if emotional intelligence, while it feels a little touchy-feely and a little bit uncomfortable, what if it's the only alternative we have? What if the other option is to periodically give emotion entire control of your life? And in those moments, values don't matter, beliefs don't matter, none of those things matter because you don't get a say in that particular season. How would your story be different? Looking back, had you had just a little bit more emotional intelligence? And again, this isn't about guilt and it's not about shame, though I think God's fingerprints are all over that sense of repentance and the need to ask for forgiveness, whether you articulate that in spiritual words or not. Looking ahead, the next time you're feeling jealous, what happens if you can actually name the emotion? And what happens differently than what normally happens? The next time you're feeling disgust or rejection, the next time you're feeling slighted, the next time you're feeling offended, the next time you had an uncommunicated expectation and you're feeling disappointed, what happens if you can grab that thing and identify it? How does the future look different? Or parents, let's talk about your kids. What happens differently for them when he's 15 or 16 years old? What happens when your daughter, for the first time in her life at 16, is hearing, when she's hearing some sap whisper sweet nothings into her ear, things she's only heard on movies and TV, feelings that she never knew she could feel. What happens if in that moment he or she, what happens if she knows that living by feelings isn't the only option she has? Or what happens 9 months later when he gets his heart broke and he has this overwhelming sense at 16 that he met and missed the only person who could ever make him happy? What happens if in that moment he can name those things, articulate those things, and work forward from there? Listen, I don't want to objectify something, but I think we had a vivid reminder of this in our own community this week. Allegedly, and I know that word's important, allegedly a 25-year-old man beat a 2-year-old girl to death. Again, if you're personally impacted by that, I am not trying to objectify. But if you heard that story or you read that article, why do you in your humanity connect with him in some sense? I mean, there's this you've got to be kidding me. But if you've ever spent 2 seconds around a 2-year-old, there's also this sense of that could have been me. What is that? I wonder how many educators, how many parents, if any, ever sidled up next to him and went hey, yeah, math's important and history's important, but can we talk about emotional intelligence? Could we talk about this train called emotion and where it'll take you if you just let it take you wherever you want? You know, I think for many of us, the question is, how does God talk about this? Because you're not here to listen to some dude talk. You have TED Talks for that. The question is, like, what does God, what does the text, how does he reconcile this? And for those of you that are followers of Christ, I think another way to think about this is how do you manage the tension between feelings and core values and actions? And even if your core values aren't that you follow Jesus, I'll bet you you can relate to this. So these guys did this very elegant, like, musical thing, and then I come and sullied it with Legos. But here's what I want to get you thinking, because I just want to create this visual. There's this tension, isn't there? Between what you feel, who you set out to be, and what you actually do. And part of what we explored last week is tragically, oftentimes what Christ followers do is they think that to follow Jesus means, like, you just eliminate this one and you start living from these two. And the belief is that this is what you do, is you just believe the right things and you respond to them and you do them, and there's some truth to that. But what if Jesus felt? What if he felt profoundly? And what if he didn't turn emotion off? What if he actually felt far more profoundly than most of us do? What if he learned to manage the tension? Because there is a tension here, isn't there? I mean, how good of a Christ follower would you be if the only thing that mattered is what you could write down on the test? If you were only judged at what you cerebrally, intellectually believed, how awesome are you? In fact, sometimes when we go like, why Christ? I mean, we don't need Christ. Like, just got to do the right. Yeah, if it was that simple, we could probably argue for the lack of a need for a Christ, couldn't we? If there was no feelings, no temptation. And so the question I want to ask this morning, and for those of you who follow Christ, I think the question is, are you managing this the way Jesus proposes? Because he didn't just come to get you into heaven. The cross is significant, the blood is significant, but he also came to teach you how to live and to empower you. And for those of you who are a little bit stymied by the significance of Jesus and how he contrasts with maybe just everyday good, helpful teaching, I think we're going to nail it this morning. And in some ways, you're just going to get to sit back and go, here's what Jesus would offer. There's a place in Jesus' life where I think the text captures this tension in his life very, very well. And before we jump to it, let me warn you. So the Apostle John, many people, those who I trust especially, they think that John was 12 years old when Jesus was hanging on the cross. So John is this disciple. It's not a known thing, but there's a disciple in the Gospel of John who Jesus repeatedly refers to as the one whom he loved. It sure seems that that's this 12-year-old John, which would begin to make sense when you think about the ages there. And while the other gospel writers, they give us this window into Jesus' emotional state when he was in the garden on the eve of being arrested, John does something different because he backs up from there and he gives us a window into Jesus' emotional state long before the garden. So turn to John chapter 12. In John chapter 12, we'll start with this one. Jesus says, "Now my soul is troubled." Now those of you who are biblically very literate, this isn't the garden. This is pre the garden. "Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour." And in fact, I didn't even bring my Bible this week. I just brought Legos because what I want to do is break this thing up, so I've got it on here. So how's that for kindergarten? The word there, troubled, you guys, is the word tarasso. Now, what other part of your body does that word remind you of? Maybe we could ask you this. When you feel dark, negative emotion, where do you feel it? In your big toe? In your brain? No, there are seasons of life, things that you do, maybe cyclically, where you can't get enough Pepto. Why? Where do you need that? There's this gut thing, right? There's this like, ugh. The word tarasso is, if you do word studies in the text, is a fascinating one because it means several different things in the New Testament. First of all, it means like anguish of mental or even emotional experience. In fact, when Jesus is born, the Gospels say that Herod, who was king of Israel at the time, it says he was greatly disturbed and troubled. It's the word tarasso. Like he knew that the birth of this Jesus was going to mess with him. But it also, in the Gospels, there's a pool called Bethesda, And the legend of Jesus' day was that this pool, periodically an angel would show up and he would stir the pool, or she would stir whatever. Angels don't have, I don't know. I'm getting deep in the weeds. Do angels have gender? I don't know. Go Google it. Anyway, so there's this, they would just stir the water. The belief was that those who were born with physical disabilities or whatever, that the first one in would be healed. The word there for the stirring of that pool is the word tarasso, which when you feel negative emotion kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The other time it shows up is in Acts 17. And in Acts 17, the disciples are they're making trouble. That was kind of their deal. And a riot broke out. The word is tarasso. So Jesus, he's feeling this incredible anguish. Now here's just what I want to articulate. Where would you place this statement from Jesus? Is it a feeling? Is it a value? Or is it a behavior? Like, where do you put it? And the people said, where do you put it? Okay, I'll go on strike. Where do you put it? Thank you. Okay, good job. I don't know what I'm going to go on strike from. Okay, so there's that. Now Jesus continues. No, he says, it was for this very reason that I came to this hour. Do you see what he just did? I feel something. It's dark. It's uncomfortable. I think John is alluding to the fact that over the course of Jesus' ministry, he had this moment. Maybe the reason, and part of the reason at least, he had to repeatedly get away and go get alone with the Lord is because he had this sense of like, I don't know, Lord, this is uncomfortable. I'd like to run as fast as I can in the other direction. And he would catch himself in that and follow it with what? No. It's for this reason that I came. Now, how would you categorize this statement? Is it a feeling? Or is it a value, a belief? Or is it an action? It's a value. So maybe Jesus is more like you than you thought. That he has both. And at times they run contrary to each other. They conflict with one another. Many of you may remember that incredible mini-series put out by Tom Hanks called Band of Brothers. Remember the scene where there's a young comrade in an airplane. He's getting ready to jump into the European theater for the first time. He's as terrified as most of us can't even imagine being terrified. And remember, he sidles up next to an older soldier. And the older soldier is recognizing that this person feels in a way that it's killing him. Remember what the older soldier says to him? I don't remember the exact words, but it contains the idea of your problem is you haven't reconciled with the fact that you're already dead. And he explains to the guy, until you just accept the fact that you're not going back home alive, this can't happen. What is he saying to him? Is he saying you need to live from your feelings? That's the key. Or is he inviting him to go, wait a minute. The way you get yourself out of this plane isn't the feeling. You draw upon the value, the purpose, why you're here, why we're here, that transcendent purpose that brought you to this place. That's where you've got to operate from. Doesn't it seem like Jesus has this moment of anguish, not unlike the ones we all have, and then he has this moment of like, duh, okay, but this is why I'm here, and this is what I'm about, and this is who I committed to being. And then he says one very simple phrase. He says, Father, glorify your name. Now, we could argue this one a little bit. Maybe it's a value. I call it a behavior because the next thing Jesus does is he marches. The next thing he does is he goes. He does. See, here's my question. As we talk about emotional intelligence, as we talk about this train that we so easily board, as we talk about whether we're going to have control or not have control, what if the model of Jesus is you live from your core values, not your feelings? Now, I've been working with this guy. I call him Coach Dick. I've been working with him for a long time now. And he's been preaching to me, Adam, to be a follower of Christ is live from your core values, not your feelings. Be a follower of Christ is live from your core values, not your feelings. And I finally had this moment with him in February where I was like, okay, enough. Like, I hear what you're saying, but get real. Because when I'm feeling, it takes over. When I'm feeling, I don't know what else to do. In fact, what I said to him was like, no offense. And this guy's clinical in lots of areas, got more degrees than I have letters in my name. And I just said like, okay, But I feel like everything you're saying is contradicting the whole stream of emotional intelligence. Everything I've learned from Cloud and Townsend, and those are familiar names to him, everything I've learned from this whole stream of people, those who follow Jesus and those outside of that stream who are saying feeling is so incredibly important, emotional intelligence is so important, I feel like you're completely contradicting all of it because you keep telling me what I feel doesn't matter. It only matters what I believe. And for me, there was this incredible aha that followed. And he said, Adam, it's not at all what I'm saying. In fact, he said, what I am telling you is feel and feel profoundly. I think what guys like Cloud and Townsend and the whole sort of them are saying is that you must feel, you must identify what you're feeling, but the purpose of feeling, and here for me was the deal, the purpose of knowing what you're feeling is so that you can block it from sabotaging your behavior. He said, people who live from their core values, they're not people who turn off emotion. They're people who are very in tune with emotion and make a conscious decision to live not from that emotion, but from the core value. What if? What if for you the purpose of feeling is to know, I feel insecure right now. And I'm not going to behave from that place because that's not who I've set out to be. I feel, just fill in the blank. What if the macho don't feel just go do the right thing, which I think us Christ followers are worse at than most? What if that's not at all Jesus' example? What if we get to follow his lead of being very sincere, very honest, very aware of what he's feeling? And then we take a deep breath. And we go, everything in me wants to pay them back. Everything in me wants to strike back. Everything in me wants to exchange. I want to volley words right now. But it's not who I signed up to be. And I'm not going to do that. Several years ago when I was had the privilege of working on staff at Harvest in Billings, one of the mother churches of this place, Vern did a series, the lead pastor there, he did a series called I'm a Hypocrite. And it was a classic Vern, billboards, mailers, T-shirts. I mean, it was a gigantic series. And the idea, the idea behind it was to just confess. I'm a hypocrite. And what he was trying to do was just simply underline that the biggest criticism of Christ followers is 100% accurate. That we don't do what we say. Because that's the definition of a hypocrite. Maybe I could give you this out on this one this morning. If you set out to go like, I'm going to feel so that my feelings don't sabotage core values, you'll be a hypocrite. In fact, maybe we just help you to go like, I'm a hypocrite. Listen, if you push me in a corner and go, why Jesus? If you ask me, why do I follow Jesus, not just listen to TED Talks, though I love TED Talks, it's these moments that articulate it for me. Because the promise of Jesus isn't, here's an idea, now go do it. The promise of Jesus is, here's truth. And now I'll give you the power to do it. The promise of Jesus isn't just grace for salvation. It's grace to actually live out this otherwise impossible existence. That's the gospel. What if you lowered the bar a little bit? What if the goal wasn't to forevermore, because they said it at church, I'm never going to make a decision out of feeling again. What if we just simplify it a little bit? What if the goal was just once tomorrow you caught yourself? No. What if just once tomorrow the Holy Spirit could catch you about to make an emotional decision? What if that was the prayer? Lord, just one time. I'm just asking for one a day, just one a day this week. And when I'm 40, then 10 years from now, whatever, maybe 2 a day, but I don't want to ask too much. I'm a goal guy. I know many of you guys are. I believe if you don't track it, it doesn't matter. On my little moleskin where I sit down and track goals every morning in my chair time, under my column under dad, there's a box. And when I can look back on the day before and I didn't lash out at the boys one time, I didn't get overstimulated. I didn't do that emotional, like, you know, and if you don't, then you're the angry kid who isn't a parent yet. So, you know, if I can just reflect on the previous day and go, I didn't parent from an emotional place once yesterday, then I get to check the box, and I get a sucker, and it's wonderful. Just kidding. what if God didn't just come to teach you what to believe and what to think? What if he's not just a moralist who stands by and says, I told you the right thing to do, and I'll whip you in the behind when you don't? What if God is a God who says, I don't just want to tell you what to do, I want to help you navigate this incredible tension called feeling and core value and behavior? And what if what separates Jesus is his willingness to enter into your life and help you see those moments? What if as you look back on the day and you remember like, oh man, to that employee, to that friend, and that phone call, to that email, that was emotional. What if you found the courage to go back to that person and go, hey, listen, I'm sorry. It may or may not matter. It may or may not change the way you feel about me at this point, but I made an emotional decision there. It's not what I value. I'm sorry. And I'll probably do it again, but I'm working on this. And for those of you that you've just never found Jesus to be relevant in the everyday existence of your life, maybe this is where he becomes real to you. Maybe your issue isn't what to believe and what to think. Maybe your sense of right and wrong is pretty on par with everybody else that you know as far as you can tell. What if it's your feelings persistently sabotaging your behavior that's the problem? What if Jesus becomes more real to you by being Lord, not just of your thoughts and not just of your behavior, but of helping you navigate feeling and the tension between that and behavior? Listen, I don't want to put a facade on this thing. I feel what you feel. This is the most difficult thing I feel like I've ever bumped into in my study of what it means to be a better person. More so in my study of what it means to follow Jesus. You know, if you can do once a day now, maybe 10 years from now you can do twice. 20 out of 100 doesn't make you a very good baseball player unless you can pitch. But it might make you a heck of a dad. Might make you a heck of a wife, of a mother, of a coworker. What if we just trusted Jesus to help us, beg him to catch us in the midst of the feeling so that we can truly live from the core value? I'd like to pray for you. God, as we just reflect on you and what it means to follow you, God, I have no doubt that there's some here who are sincere followers of yours and have been for as long as they can remember, but they've never thought in terms of surrendering their emotion. Never thought of their need for your leadership in their life to understand what they're feeling. And maybe they've even confused that what you call them to do is not feel. Jesus, I pray that you become alive and real to them in fresh ways. And God, for people here who they've been intrigued by you but never chose to follow you, God, we know we're not born Christ followers. We make a decision to do that. God, I pray that you'd be alive and apparent in our lives. And for those who the need for emotional leadership is most glaring for them, Jesus, that you would sidle up next to them and just continue to offer to be their leader. Jesus, thanks for not being a guru. Thanks for not being this hoity-toity who doesn't ever feel anything. Thanks, Jesus, for recording the full gamut of your feeling, both the positive and the negative, the light and the dark. And Jesus, we just thank you so much that you left us this vivid picture of what it means to feel and how it is to then not live from that place. God, just send your spirit into our lives this week. Help us identify opportunities. Give us the courage to act on them. Amen.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.